Hey, how you doing? Today's video, I'm going to do a commentary on a YouTube video that I was watching on my laptop computer, and it is by Judiyah32, and she did a video regarding her DNA testing that she did, and well, throughout this video that I'm shooting here, I'm going to lift up my little tablet that I'm actually filming on right now, and then I'm going to move it, when I'm pointing to a section on her video, and so you can see. I haven't learned the skill yet of editing videos and combining things to make one complete, so that's why I'm going to be going back and forth, So let me just lift it up so I can show you who it's by. Okay, let's see here. Okay, it's by Judiyah32, and it's entitled My DNA Results. And as you see, she did her DNA with DNA tribes. Okay, so I'm going to put it down now. Okay, so I'm going to start with, beginning of it.
And I'm very excited to do this video today, okay. And at the same time, it's something very personal to me and my family to see where we come from. And not just to see it, but to see it in great detail.
Okay. So, she has here, okay, she indicates that it is an educational ministry of the Hebrew Israelite truth. Okay? So, all that's important. So what Judiyah32, what she's saying, that she's representing this group of people, and it's about truth. And I'm about truth also. I'm a seeker also. I want to know about my heritage, and part of our spirituality is knowing, where we come from. Okay? So that's what actually got me interested in looking at her video, because I also did a DNA research on myself, and I was looking over the internet, other people who did the same thing, and hers is one of many that I looked at, but upon reading her, watching the video, I thought it had some problematic areas in it. Okay, she gives a disclaimer at position 1 minute and 5 seconds. I'm going to just scroll over to the 1 minute 5 second marker on her video. Okay.
I am white. I am black. We are Hebrew Israel.
Okay, let me go back a little bit. Oops. Okay, she's going to give a disclaimer at the 1 minute 5 second marker on the video. Okay, that sometimes how people identify themselves, ultimately what it means for them. So for her disclaimer for the video, this is her disclaimer.
So let me start off by saying this though.
Okay, this is
We've
her.
all made block statements, like
okay.
I am white, I am black, we are Hebrew Israelites. But I try to make certain we all know that due to slavery and choice, many of us, if not all of us, are mixed. And today, what we're all doing really is acknowledging the portion of who we are that we relate to the most. Okay. For example, you may call yourself black, knowing you have some European in you, but you call yourself black because of your ancestors' experience as slaves.
Okay.
And maybe you grew up in the South, so you obviously relate more to the black experience than the white.
Exactly.
So it's not just about our ethnic mix. It boils down to your family history, and that ultimately determines what you call yourself.
I agree with that.
I personally desire to acknowledge the most original part of who I am. Before the mixing, before slave violations, I want to know exactly where I come from.
Okay, so this is her goal. By doing this DNA testing, she wants to know her heritage before all this melee happened. Again, she's part of the Hebrew Israelites, and the premise is that their origins is from the ancient Hebrews. Okay, so she's going to try to prove this with the DNA findings. Okay, so that's the disclaimer, and the next part, she's with DNA tribes. That the company that did her DNA, it's broken down into different categories, and part B is the portion of her DNA that I think it's like the thumbprint. Let me get to that part. This section on her video is that position around 5 minutes and 14 seconds. Let me scroll it over to that section. Okay, I'm still scrolling. Oops. Okay. I do a little bit before 5:14 just to get into the, so you can see the whole section. Let's see.
What they're doing is matching me to populations in a database of 964.
Okay, let me back up a little bit more. I'm sorry.
So, in part B, they call it my native population match results. And what they're doing is matching me to populations in a database of 964 native populations that have had very little movement or mixing within the last 500 years.
Oops.
So, here's a map they provide to show you.
I'm going to back up a little bit because I want you to see it. Okay. Oops. Okay, you know, actually, this section, I should have this here. I mean, it's not really that important. This section here is part A, it's an apple. And this is like the fingerprint, you can say, of one's DNA. And it's all, you know, everybody's allele is very unique. No one has the same exact numbers. This is an example. This isn't actually her thumbprint, but she's shown this as an example. This was actually part A, but it was part B, the next section that I wanted to show. So let me just get that part B. Okay, again, I'm new with this. Okay, this is part B. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger, so you can, you know, so when you're looking at it, you know, on your computer, when you're viewing it, let me see if I can zoom in more. Okay, so you could even like put on pause and read it. This is DNA tribes explanation of what part B is, and it's the native population match. Okay, let me just move my laptop back. My tablet back. So I'm going to play it now. Okay, so this was position 514 as I indicate. Let me just play it so you can hear what she says about part B.
Results. And what they're doing is matching you to populations in a database of 964 native populations that have had very little movement or mixing within the last 500 years.
Okay.
So
part B is just indicating that they get a sample size of different indigenous people, and they had about let's see, let me just back up a little bit. Okay, so this part B in her section was they took a sample of 964 native populations, and this is also during a 500 years ago. So 500 years ago, the DNA findings are as such for her, and they're going to show the top 20, locations that she popped up as. So I'm going to move that to another section of the video and show you the results. Okay, this section is on 6 minutes and 25 seconds about. Okay, I'm going to start it at 6 minutes and 22 seconds. Okay. Okay, so here she has, and this is at position 6 minutes and 22 seconds, but I'm just showing you, roughly what she has. Okay, so you see like the green bars, each of those lines, are different locations, and they're only selecting the top 20 out of her whole gene pool. So this is the majority. And as you see, most of it is in West Africa. So let me just turn it on, the video, with her video, so you can hear what she's saying.
The results, you can see that going back no more than 500 years, okay, when you look at that top green bar, that top score, my DNA traces back to Nigeria in great numbers, okay, meaning that I share the DNA of the people there more than any other place in the world within the last 500 years. That red dot in the middle is Nigeria, and the pink dots represent other tribes my DNA was found in.
So let me make sure you see that again.
And the blue dots are other populations my DNA was found in, and even lesser concentrations.
Okay, just want to make sure you see what she's referring to.
If you look at the graph they provided, you see how heavily concentrated those dots are around Nigeria and the West.
Okay, so what she's saying is primarily 500 years ago, with the top 20 percentages in her gene pool that was reflected in this testing. Primarily, it's in Nigeria, the heaviest concentration. Okay, and then in the next position, at position 7 minutes and 25 seconds, she gives an excuse that why her DNA is in West Africa, and she attributes her ancestors there because Muslims had brought them there to West Africa, and they might have intermarried with them. It's no secret that with the slave trade that the men took liberties of the ladies, and it oftentimes might have resulted in a birth of, through that union. So she's saying that it sounds like she's implying that any relative that's there in West Africa, that they're not originally from there, but that they were brought there, and then from there they were sent over to the Americas, okay? But my question with that is that the Part B, it's the company DNA trial specified that Section B, as in boy, is only the native population. Okay, so if it's a native population, that's her native group. They're not including in that sample of people who migrated there into West Africa. No, it's only the indigenous population there that she's picking up. Okay, indigenous is indigenous. If the indigenous would have included, let's say, from the Middle East, 500 years ago, it would have indicated that, because genes are genes, and genes are where they are. And for her and her gene pool, it only indicated that 500 years ago, that location and the top location. So it would have also indicated the indigenous people from 500 years ago back then, Or let's say she's saying that, I mean, I don't know whether she's implying that the Muslims there are people who migrated from the Middle East, or that these are Muslims who converted. They're from the local population from Nigeria and the regions around there, and that they had children with the non-Muslims. So I don't know what she's saying, you know. But what she did say was, you know, in fact, I'll play what she's saying. Okay.
Coast of Africa, where the slave trade occurred.
Okay, this is section 7.09.
Most of us who stem from the transatlantic slave trade, if we get a DNA test done, it's going to link us to West Africa. There is no getting around that, because that's the port where we were sold from, and that's where we dwelled prior to enslavement by Muslims. We resided there for hundreds of years, and many of us may have mixed, if not with the natives, with the Islamic slave owners who sold us off. So we have Africa in us. I expected to see that. Being there are many tribes in Africa, my DNA can be traced back to several of them. Once you mix with someone, whatever their mix is becomes your mix. So you see my DNA is most similar to those in Nigeria, but you...
Okay. So that's basically what I was saying, that it's not like that she's distancing herself from the people that she matches genetically with, because she's saying that the only reason why that they're there was that they were brought there from another location and that they mixed with the Muslims. Okay, a Muslim is not a genetic mix. Okay, this DNA testing is strictly just that, who you share genetic material with. And again, she did say, well, if they mix with the people that were brought over, you know, the people there in West Africa, there's no distinction really between, you know, the religious groups over in West Africa. You know, anyone could be any religion, any religious tradition, you know. So I just thought it was interesting that here, you know, you have DNA, and it's just telling you that, okay? So I thought that was concerning. Okay, the next thing she talks about is, let's see. Okay, also with Part B, with this finding, that she says that it's a recent DNA, and that she will later show you that, you know, there's older DNA linked to it, you know. So this is in position 822. Okay, I hope I made sense with that. That came across a little awkward, I think. I know what I mean to say, but, you know, for clarity, I want to make sure that I got my point across. It might have come across a little awkward. Okay, so here she's going to talk about that the DNA from West Africa...
500 years. Okay. We're going to go back further than this.
Let me back up just a little bit more.
Is a recent DNA link to the past 500 years. We're going to go back further than this in Part D. But first, I want to show you Part C.
Okay.
Now, Part C, they call my global population match results.
Oops.
Again.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me back up a little bit more. Okay, what I meant to put there with position 822 was that she's saying that this DNA for Part B that I was just showing you is recent DNA, and that it's not really representing her, because it's not ancient. Okay, so let me just bring that back. I want to make sure that's clarified.
For the past 500 years. We're going to go back further than this in Part D. But first, I want to show you Part C.
Oops. I thought it put it back further enough. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. 822. Okay, let me try it here. This might
in Africa, in Guinea, in Cameroon, Benin, which, by the way, used to be known as the Kingdom of Judah. if you research the 1747 map of the land. Okay, but remember, this is a recent DNA link to the past 500 years. We're going to go back further than this in Part D.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I got that on, on the video, that she's saying that Part B as in boy is recent DNA. Okay, so again, it sounds like she's trying to distance herself from the DNA proof that's showing her that she's West African. Okay. So now for Part C as in cat is going to be the next section of the DNA. And Part C, it's going to show you her top 20 locations for the diaspora. So we already saw in Part B as in boy that the mass majority of the DNA matches are in West Africa, and primarily in Nigeria. And that with Part C, where did those ancestors go to? Okay, so that's what this section is, and that's in position 8 minutes and 34. So I can put it on here.
First, I want to show you Part C.
Okay, Part C.
Now, Part C they call my global population.
Okay, let me show you that.
Again, we're looking within a 500-year time frame from about the year 1500 to today.
Oops.
So they start back 500 years ago.
I'm sorry,
and the DNA test actually shows my ancestors' migration out of Africa. Call my global population.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I meant to do was just, because I want you to be able to see what the company says, what Part C represents. This is the global population match. So, what you can do, you could put this video on pause, and then you can read what it says, okay? So that's what it says, okay? And then I'm going to play it. This is her explanation what Part C is.
Population match results. Again, we're looking within a 500-year time frame from about the year 1500 to today. So they start back 500 years ago, and the DNA test actually shows my ancestors' migration out of Africa.
Okay, I want to show this too.
Now, the circles indicate where my ancestors were closer to 500 years ago.
Okay.
The diamonds indicate where they ended up, where they migrated to. So you still see that significant red circle over in Nigeria. But when you look over to America, you see a bunch of diamonds. Looking at that yellow diamond over in Canada, yellow means that my DNA is highly linked to people of that population within the past 500 years. And there's another yellow diamond over in Ireland. That's Ireland way over there to the right.
Okay.
So for a long time, I've known my ancestors were owned by an Irish slave master. So this DNA test was actually able to pick up on that. My DNA match.
Okay. Why I put it on pause is because she's given inaccurate information and interpreting what the findings are. And again, this is for her Part C's in cat. As you see, okay, it's hard to see on the screen because it's very blurred. And again, this is, what she has here. You see the part where in the UK, it has like a little yellow marking, and then over in the United States, it has another little yellow dot. Okay, I'm sorry, I call it a dot, but it's a diamond shape. And according to this this screen, the legend that it has, this thing here, okay, the legend indicates that a diamond means the diaspora, African diaspora specifically, okay? The diamond does not indicate a European diaspora, okay? See that legend on the left-hand side? they give you what it means. Okay, so she's saying that the yellow diamond in the UK area is representative of her being mixed with an Irish person, and that's due to the slave trade. Now, that she is incorrect. This page for Part C is representing where her ancestors from Part B as in boy, where they are now during a 500-year period. So that means from today up to 500 years ago, and where they are, where they are on this map, where they could be detected. So that yellow is not indicating a European man or woman ancestor. It just means that her African ancestor, that some of them migrated to the UK, and she says that she knows in her family tree that one of her slave masters was a European, an Irish person. Okay, so if this is to be an educational video, she is misinterpreting what it says, and I don't know how she could misinterpret it, because it specifically says all these dots that you see, the red, blue, yellow, all those represent African, African heritage that is abroad, not her European ancestry if she has. Okay, so that was a little problematic for me. Okay, and then below, what's in green is the concentration, where the largest concentration is. Okay, so let me put it back. So for Part C, the largest concentration of her ancestors now is actually living in Canada, and the second largest is the yellow that's in the UK. Okay, and then the third largest is Nigeria. Okay, so that's all I want to say with that. Okay, the next part I want to talk about is, let's see. Okay, it's nitpicking. I don't even have to even put that part in. Well, she was referring to some of the dots that's in the Caribbean, and the marker is in Haiti, but she says it's Cuba, when on the chart, where they type out, the concentrations from the highest to the lowest, it specifically says Afro-Caribbean Haiti. But she says in the video that it's Cuba. Okay, so I'm going to put that down. Let's see. I'll play it. That's in section 1127. Let me push that over. So I guess what I'm getting at is that she selectively calls a particular location by a name that it's not the name. And like she doesn't want people to believe, or she doesn't want to, it sounds like she doesn't want to be associated with a particular location. And it doesn't say that. So this is 1127. Okay, I'll put it on 1117 and play it.
Florida, which is where I was born. Oops. You also see.
Let me put it back a little bit. Back a little bit more.
South to North Carolina. I have DNA matches there too.
Okay, she's saying she has
and
DNA
see,
in North Carolina.
A blue diamond down in Florida, which is where I was born.
Okay.
You also see even more significant traces of my DNA in Cuba.
Okay.
But we all know as slaves we were shipped all over. So.
Okay, so it clearly says Haiti, but she says Cuba. Okay, so I'm just nitpicking there, but it's supposed to be educational, and she's deliberately saying a location where it doesn't say. It specifically says you know, when you put it on pause and look at the chart where indicate, you're going to see it says Haiti, not Cuba. Okay. Let's see. Oh, now she's going to talk about the next section I want to discuss is part D's and David. This is actually the most compelling part of her video that I feel that really discredits her credibility. And let me see here. So in section 12.40, 12 minutes and 40 seconds, she'll next discuss part D's and David. So let me scroll it over to that section. Okay. Can I do a little bit before so we get in the context of what she's talking about?
Calls it my world region match.
Let's back up a little bit more.
Now the final part, part D,
okay.
Tribe DNA calls it my world region match results, where they sample the native population along with other relatively close native populations, because immigration affects the numbers. They don't want to link you to a bunch of immigrants that reside in that land.
Okay, so you can put it on pause and read it what it says.
That have had very little movement. So you're not just seeing where you're linked to, but what nations you're linked to, and get a clearer picture of your true ethnicity. So part D, DNA tribes, claims is the most telling of your ancestry because it reveals, quote unquote, long-term patterns of migration over several millennia, which is several thousands of years, they say.
Okay, so you heard from her mouth that part D as in David is the most compelling because as she says, it reflects the long-term patterns of migration and settlement. Okay, but why it's problematic, why I find this part problematic of a video, is that she selectively only indicated one paragraph of the company's explanation what part D represents. Okay, now what I'm going to show you right now is the company's website itself. Okay, hope I can get this in here. This is the company's website. I'm trying to get the whole thing. It's hard for me to navigate here. Okay, so you see here it says Part D, World Region Match. Okay, so make sure I'm just trying to make sure I get the whole thing in there. Okay, so she indicates only in the first part, the first paragraph of the explanation what part D is. See that second paragraph? It says the highest score indicates your primary geographical affiliation, etc. And you notice that that the smaller geographical area just indicates its other locations where her DNA is found. But that whole paragraph she excludes from her video. This is the most important part of this whole video for her, and she excludes that. Why did she exclude it? Well, I'm going to tell you why she speculate or guesstimate why she excludes that. See, again, in the beginning of her video, she wants to prove that she's not West African and that she is from the Middle East, okay? So this is compelling. So the company says specifically that the highest score indicates your primary geographical affiliation, and subsequent scores indicate secondary regions where your DNA profile can also be found. The regions where your DNA profile is most frequent are mapped as large circles, and other regions are plotted as circles visually scaled according to match scores. Okay, so it's logical. If something is big, that means it's a lot. Something is small, represent a smaller number of people. That's using common sense. And the DNA tribes is just telling you the same thing. It's logical when you're doing a visual representation. Okay, so that's on their website itself. They indicate that. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back to her video and indicate what she's. Let's see here. Okay, position 13 minutes and 39 seconds. She indicates that it indicates her DNA findings indicate most recent DNA. Okay, when the company themselves, their explanation of how to interpret the findings does not indicate that it's the most recent. It just indicates the affiliation. Okay, so let me start playing it at 1339. 1339. Let's see. Okay, I did a little bit before 1328.
Well, thousands of years, so you can be looking back into BC, seeing what populations your DNA matches to. They say the highest number indicates my most recent geographical origin and where many of my ancestors currently reside.
And this is where hers is.
Subsequent scores indicate regions my
This is
ancestors
hers.
migrated from.
See that big circle in Africa?
So you're actually able to see your ancestral migration throughout the world and get a clearer picture of where you're actually from.
Okay.
So as the numbers go down, it's like we're going further back into time. Now, I've seen several people misinterpret this part to mean the highest number is where your ancestors stem from. But that is not the case in Part D. In Part D, the highest number is where most of your ancestors are today. And if you're a so-called African American, due to persecution and slavery and the mixing of our ancestors, many of them today, if not scattered around the world, are still in the western portion of Africa. So the large...
Okay, so she gave you incorrect information. She said that large circle that I showed you is just where you are currently. Okay, but according to the company who designed the test, and they spell it out, that the large circle, the larger region is your most affiliation. Has nothing to do with time frame. Okay, they cannot decide, in the DNA, which DNA is older than another. Again, this test that she got is showing you the different alleles and that she inherited from the mother and father's side. It's what they call the autosomal DNA testing. Okay, they can only go back 500 years. Period. Okay, that's all. In any DNA test to find how far back. The only time where they can go further back is using your mitochondrial DNA or your Y chromosome, because those they very really change. They don't change readily. Okay, and so they can determine with genetic variations that occur slowly in time, they can calculate approximately how old a DNA could be. But that's only with the mitochondrial DNA and the Y DNA, not the autosomal, what she is discussing. Okay, and she's saying that it's just recent, but according to DNA tribes, they just indicate it's just the affiliation. And again, they can only go back 500 years, period. Okay? And then she has here, let's see. Let me go 14. I'm going to continue playing because this whole section on D.
Larger number are telling you where people with like DNA to yours mainly are today. But the smaller numbers are telling you where your ancestors came from.